when we started Stellic, we were 3 founders and 4 interns. One of those interns was stay in touch with us, and he came back and said, "Hey, what if I join you guys full time?" I said, "That sounds great." So he joined as
Yeah.
one of our first employees after the
Right.
internship, and then many years later, now he's our CTO.
Wow.
So like this
Wow.
intern
Yeah,
program has given us like
that's
probably
amazing.
the best technical person we could have found through that journey.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Welcome to the Unlock Potential Podcast, and today we're talking about why interns might be your best hire. We have a special guest. We have Sabih, founder and CEO of Stellic. They're a hot Silicon Valley tech startup, and we're going to dive in on what kind of value can interns bring. Why would a non-tech company, like in construction, manufacturing, restaurants, should they tap into intern talent and give you an inside track of what it's like to start a program? It even helps students who want to get an edge on applying. Let's get started. Hey, everyone. So we have a fun topic. I love this topic today. We're going to talk about something I'm super passionate about, and that is interns and co-ops. And so they're going to kick off a new program, gunning for Waterloo. And as everyone knows, Waterloo is super competitive, super hard to break in. But I couldn't be more excited to be talking to him. So say hi and let's hear a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hey guys, I'm Sabih. I'm one of the founders of Stellic, as you mentioned. Really excited about this topic myself. I think we built this company as students ourselves. So always looking out for a student excitement to bring onto the team.
Yeah, that's great. Let's hear a little bit about your company. So Stellic, first, it's a great name. A second is like, what does it do, and who's the customer? What's it for?
Yeah, so it's a platform that we built when we were in college. It's a higher ed platform that helps students organize their academic journey, figuring out like what are the right pathways, what are the right courses to take, what are the right experiences to have semester by semester, and it kind of helps you optimize your path towards graduation and hopefully minimizes the regrets you have during that journey. Um, the general questions people like try to answer through the platform is, how do I fit my schedule? What are the right activities I can be part of? How do I connect the courses I want to take with the kind of skills and interests and career goals I have? Like 2 CS students, one who wants to go in startup and one who wants to go in a large like Google kind of org should not really have the same path, which I guess is connected to internship as well, actually. So it does that, and then like it leverages that engagement for advisors, so they can identify students who need guidance proactively. So students can answer a lot of questions on their own, and advisors can have their own much more like deeper, meaningful conversation with students, and not like transactional conversation that happens. And then there's a third angle to it for administrators that helps college department leads to figure out how to allocate resources on campus so that you have the right classes with the right classroom sizes and the right instructor based on how students are thinking and what they want to take around it. So it's kind of an enterprise SaaS platform centered around student engagement, but also helping support staff around students.
Love it. And I got a serious question for you. So I tend to ask most guys. That is, what do you think about pineapple on pizza?
I love it when I'm in Hawaii.
Okay. Nice. Oh, that's great. And then just for you, I brought this special T-shirt. It's one of my favorite T-shirts, and I'm going to show you. You can see it. So I used to be an intern in Microsoft in 1999. So I wore this when I was a co-op student, second year, and I'm really excited to dive into this. So as a startup, you're gunning for Waterloo, and that's a big deal. And so why invest in an internship co-op program? Because that's a very heavy investment for a company, especially for a earlier stage startup, which is great. But I'd love to get your thoughts on like why are you doing this now, and what opportunity do you see, and what's your goals for the program? What do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, as I said, like we're all about students, right? So I think I'm like 7-8 years out of college, and so the kind of learnings and the kind of energy you have uh, as a student, it kind of fades away, right? As the more you're like into the startup journey, and I don't think we can build an effective platform without that connection being there. So I think some of it is like very unique to Stellic because we serve students. having students in the building just completely changes the game. It's like your customer sitting right beside you. So that's a big part of it. I think generally the fresh eyes is also very good, right? You give a problem that yes, we have seen like 10 times from 10 different lenses in 10 different companies, and we'll always have like a similar take on it because of our own experiences, but a student wouldn't, right? They'll think of it as from a very fresh perspective. And as long as you have a culture of like no idea is a bad idea, it creates a pretty good like healthy culture of like you bring an experienced person, you bring in a student, and they try to solve the problem from different lenses. So that energy, those insights, I think is pretty powerful. And honestly, like the way I see this is if you have a very good, and I'm going to interchangeably use here internship program and fresh grad program. To me, there is a similarity between those two. Uh, it's really, you can hit a jackpot. Like folks who are like connected with you, they want to continue, right? So you have this like talent joining in early. Um, Most startups are about doing something very differently, right? And so you think about like what is the strength of bringing some experience and what is the strength of bringing somebody who has a fresh slate towards it, and that balance is so important to keep that energy and that disruptive kind of mindset in place. So they don't know any better, and I think that's the strength, that's the benefit, that's what I had doing this right out of college. So yeah, I think those are the things that I don't want to lose as the company grows and keep it going. Those were the strengths in the early days, and through this program you can continue having that in the long term too.
I love that insight because I've always been a big advocate of hiring interns and co-ops. And for those that don't, intern co-ops, they're used interchangeably. But yeah, in general, I think it's such a big lift for a company. But also, even for non-tech companies, I think for a lot of companies, they don't realize that they're such a great
Totally.
source of energy, ideas. And so, yeah, quick advice from you. If you're talking to like a construction company or like a non-tech company, what advice do you have for them? Hey, why should you consider some kind of internship and co-op program? Because I think they could bring a lot of value to them too.
Absolutely. I actually think the technical part is has over time with the new tools have become less relevant. The most relevant part are the pieces that I was just talking about. No matter what the role is, like same idea, fresh perspective is so relevant. The way I see this is like, imagine you were doing it all over again. Would you do something differently? And that's what this person is going to do. They're going to do things differently and add that character to it. And the other thing is also very true, like especially in a non-technical role, if you have a in with a great talent right in the beginning, they're going to continue with you. Like the success rate, especially the founders I worked with, the success rate of interns who joined, and if the company really wanted to continue with them, it's so high because they feel a sense of attachment to it. They have not worked anywhere else, so it's not like they have any other benchmarks to go for. So if you have provided a great environment and you enjoyed working with them, the chance of that like continuing in the second year is pretty high, and you kind of can completely eliminate the whole onboarding process because they're really like custom designed for you based on the experience they've had in the last year or so.
And what's amazing I've seen too is a lot of times the interns outperform senior people at a company, and it's again it's the energy, fresh ideas, and so it's amazing, and it gives senior people an opportunity to also rise too because they can mentor and tutor and do these great things. So that's great. So
Honestly, that depends on the if we have had a very intentional process in how you bring an intern onto the team, right? The right profile of intern, the right kind of onboarding for them is how I guess you can set them up for success.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna do a fun experiment here. So I wrote some cards here, and the idea here is I'm wearing my intern shirt back in '99, and so I'm gonna be an intern now. So I'm gonna pretend. So imagine like I'm looking at I'm back at Waterloo, and there's a job description for Stellic. And I'm like, hey, Sabih, have you heard of this company? They're hiring interns for the first time. I'm actually really excited to check it out. So what do you want the buzz to be about this program? So as an example, I'd be thinking, what jobs are hiring? What jobs are they hiring for? What are the qualifications? What major? What year? And so what do you want the word on the street to be when people start talking about Stellic?
To me, it's just two things: the problem you get to solve and the people you get to work with. Those are the only two things that really matter, right? So as an example, I'll give two examples, like one technical, one non-technical. For a technical person, say, imagine you struggle with like picking the right class sections. Wouldn't it be so cool if it could automatically integrate your careers and interests and build that thing. You want to think about like building that project, what that looks like, and bring that experience together. I bet a lot of students are frustrated, so they can relate to the problem, would jump right away into that. The other common things we have done is every summer we do this project called Voice of Students, where we talk to like 50 to 100 students across the country, and we ask them like, what do you like about the platform? What do you not like about the platform? Imagine if you could redesign it. What would you do it differently? And so we have had people from like psychology background, from philosophy, like very different backgrounds. They're going to come in and have conversation with 50 other students all across campuses, and basically in the process make friends and learn from experiences of other campuses as well, which could be really cool. So I think it's really about like problem that is that aligned with you. And I would encourage employers to think about like what problem are they giving before they extend an offer, because it's like such a short amount of time. You got to know like what project are we going to give them, and interns should be joining a project, not a company. Like that to me is a secondary thing. And the second part here is all around like the team you get to work with. Is that the team that you can go for a lunch during the interview process and ask yourself what would happen if you had 3 months hanging out with this group? Do you feel you'll come out like a lot more, I guess, aware about the space? Are you more excited about the space? So I think those are the two things that really matters, like problem and team.
Love it, love it. And yeah, and, I'm wearing my student hat. That's a product I wish that we had when I was in school, right? Because it's like you have your whole future ahead of you, and it's like choose your own adventure. There's all these forks in the road, and you're not really sure what happens here. But I love your idea about projects, because at the end, it's like, hey, I get to learn about something, have some growth, and a little bit of a try before you buy too, right? Like maybe I just want to see if this is it. And so, so I wrote down here like this is what I would normally ask, and all the students would ask. Okay, so is this a remote or in-person role? What is the mentorship structure like? Benefits? Yeah, we'd love to hear about kind of like your take on all those things.
Yeah, I think if I was an intern, I would heavily bias towards an in-person internship. It just changes the game, because the best learning is happening without a quote unquote learning environment. So you're working together, or you're going for drinks after work. You're doing these kind of things, and that's when you get the best insights from folks. So certainly in person, we have a strong bias towards that. I think almost all interns we have hired have been in person, and we want to continue that. It's more investment for for a company to think from that perspective, but I think it's like the delta. You might spend like 40-50% more, maybe 30% more, but the delta is in multiples, not in like percentages. So it really makes a difference. In terms of like the benefits, so I think it's connected to mentorship, and benefits comes together. I think there's like two profiles in my mind, and this is a very like personal question that every intern has to answer. Is it a startup or is it a big company? And I think it kind of answers both of those questions automatically. In a startup like ours, at series A, B stage, the learning is kind of detached from teaching to some extent, right? In big organizations, in FANGs of the world, you probably have a much more mature program, but the kind of problems you get to solve probably are not as broad or as deep as you get to work. Like you almost are working as like senior person on the team doing deep problems in a startup, which becomes usually like unlikely in a large organization. So you get to, in my opinion, you get to learn a lot more in a startup, but that learning is happening if you are a self learner, if you know how to hack your way in. Like that's the thing. Whereas like I think in the FANGs of the world, it's more structured. So that's a question. That's a very personal question, and that also then answers like what benefits you get with it. And I think here the benefit is around learning. The benefit is around like working with the team that you potentially can work long term if that's where you want to go as a startup. So beyond that, there isn't really anything. I think what we have done is like, again, being a startup, you can be nimble. You get to learn what benefits would matter to you, and it actually tells you a lot about the intern, or like what are they looking for in their time frame. And we have been very adaptive to what they say, and think about like what we can provide, what we cannot provide, like all those kind of things. We've had a very funny situation once where this person said like, hey, I have this offer which is like pretty significantly higher than what we could pay. We were a seed stage company at that time, and so we had this thing where we had a variable pay for that intern, and say, hey, do this work, If that work results in this outcome, we can match it because the ROI is high, but the base is lower, which is a odd thing to think about, like a variable for an intern. So we have been kind of like creative, which we could be as a startup. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, benefits in terms of tangible benefits certainly are lower, I think, in most startup systems, but hopefully the growth makes up for it.
Yeah, I love that because I've done both. Like, obviously I worked at Microsoft, and I also worked at tiny
Yeah.
or very small. And in fact, one startup I worked at was only interns. Like the engineering team was only, and
Wow.
it was a. I don't know if I can name it. I think I can. Anyways, it was a Series B startup, and the founder and CEO of a very, very big unicorn was the someone who funded it, and it was all powered by co-op intern students only.
That's
The
pretty cool.
entire engineering team in Series B, and I was like, that's amazing, right? Because imagine the throughput, but the learning. To your point, the learning's amazing. To this day, I still draw on those learnings. This is not even the learnings, but just the confidence of knowing, you know what? When I was in co-op, we like a band of people were able to achieve these great things, and so it just gives a lot of like amazing things you can fall on, and that network has been amazing. I still keep in touch with everyone, and so yeah, that's great. Today's episode is brought to you by Tonda, the smarter way to retain and engage your skilled workforce. Here's the thing: high turnover, disengagement, and financial stress are costing businesses more than they realize. That's where Tonda comes in. Leading employers are already using Tonda's financial wellness benefits to boost retention, increase productivity, and keep their best employees longer. And here's why this matters. Tonda is already helping major companies across the US, and unlocked potential listeners have the exclusive opportunity to get in before the rush hits the open market. Be among the first to supercharge your workforce with Tonda. Learn more at tonda.io/Jesse. That's TANDA.io/Jesse.
That reminded me a story that's like absolutely worth sharing. When we started Stellic, we were 3 founders and 4 interns. We were outnumbered by interns like on day one. We
Yeah,
had
yeah.
not even incorporated as a company. I was a TA for 4 of them. So I kind of knew their working style and like how well we could work together. One of those interns was stay in touch with us and wanted to think about doing their own startup. And so I was like, that's important, by the way, for each employer to think about, like, what are you giving back
Hmm.
to the person
Yep.
who is giving their time. And so he wanted to do his own thing, and so I was like helping him, whatever information I can share I was sharing. And that didn't work out much. Then he came back and said, hey, what if I join you guys full time? I said, that sounds great. So he joined as
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of our first employees after the
Yeah.
internship. And then many years later, now he's our CTO.
Wow.
So like this
Wow.
intern
Yeah,
program has given us like
that's
probably
amazing.
the best technical person we could have found through that journey.
Yeah, yeah, and I think even for me, again, like just going out on our own, I draw from that experience, and it's just amazing. And so let's get down to business. So let's say, oh man, I'm really excited about Stellic. So, what kind of interview and format are you going to use? How can I prepare? And what's the hardest question you ask and you've been asked in your career so far?
I am a big believer of no gotcha questions. You just have a very frank, candid conversation and hopefully help both parties figure out if it's a good fit or not. Um, what we look for is a few things. And again, this is like what's true for interns is also true for fresh grads. Uh, Super high drive, like they're looking for like some big boost in their journey, and they're looking for like going all intense in an environment. So high drive for success. Curiosity is another big thing, just like a attitude of like always learning, going deeper than you have to on sometimes. So curiosity is another thing. And the third thing we look for is ownership. So when things get like blocked, how do you unblock it? Like, is that instinctive to you, or do you wait for someone to help you unblock it, or are you going to go after to make sure this is mine, I'm going to make sure this succeeds? I think between like those three things, you usually get a very good idea of will there'll be a good fit in a high growth startup. um, in the interview process is pretty straightforward. Like we are checking for those things, but we try to do like more hands-on stuff. You throw a problem and you say how the person solves it. Interestingly, we don't really look much for like their grades or their courses that they have taken. We are more interested in the stories they get to tell. One of my favorite questions I ask is like, what did you do every summer? you know
Oh, that's a
and it
great
tells
one.
you
Yeah.
like how they think about it, like how they think
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time when it is not bounded by the external factors like the university curriculum. What does a person choose to do? So those are the kind of things we try to do some hands-on work and see if it's a good fit.
I love that because we found that, at least for me, I felt like the best employers are the one that they don't even look at grades. They like tear up the sheet. They go, I don't even want to see it.
Right,
It's
right.
like I just want to meet you, have a discussion, and think, hey, are we gonna have fun working together? Are we a good culture fit? Is this are you gonna be excited about this? And I think that's great to hear that. So what's your advice for people on how to prepare? And so like like getting interview, it's really nerve wracking, right? Because we're not expert interviewees, and so the idea of like, man, oh, this is so scary. So yeah, what advice do you have for people how to get in the game for it and prepare?
So there's one thing which is like a culture or stage fit, and then there's a skill fit thing, right? For roles which are on the fresh grad side or interns, like the skill fit is less relevant, honestly, and it's the culture fit is way more relevant, right? So I already mentioned about like high drive, sense of ownership and curiosity. Those, you are who you are, right? Like that's the advice is like be more curious, like have higher aspirations. There's no gotchas there. Uh, in terms of like the skill part, I actually think is for technical roles, hackathons are the best. You get to like solve all kind of interesting problems. As a student, I participated in a bunch of hackathons, and that sets you up quite a bit for success. Curiosity around different tools, how they work, is been very helpful. Again, this is not about like how to get an internship, and more about like being more ready for workforce. If you find an app, if you find a tool, you kind of like go in and say, wait, how did they build it? Let me try to like reverse engineer some of the
Yeah,
algorithms
yeah,
that
yeah.
they're trying to use. And that is part of your kind of like life and personality in your college. And if that is true, that, yeah, I guess like we don't really have a very complex like interview process. So the way you prep is like, if those values are yours, then it should be a pretty straightforward process. It should be a pretty candid way of doing things.
You just remind me of something. So I remember, I'm not going to name the last name of this person. I had this friend Peter
Mhm.
in school, and we both had an interview for a job that we really really want. I'll just name the company. It was EA. So we're interviewing for EA. I remember I think it was Tiger Woods game, whatever.
Yeah.
He got the job and I didn't. And I just remember, kudos to him. But the thing is, when I asked him about his interview, it was so different. I was grilled, like, "Oh man, you got to do this, this, this,
Mhm.
this," and I was running out of whiteboard space. I kept erasing. I was just like sweat. I'm like, "What was your interview like?" Oh, it was so easy. I just showed my project. I was just showing the
Right.
code. They asked me all these questions, and I'm like, "Oh my god." So your thing about the hackathon is amazing because then you can talk about the hackathon, like it's the ultimate interview. You walk through a project, and I was like, I actually have done a lot of projects, but I never thought about bringing my computer and showing it, right? And
Mm.
so that really that was a really I was a really early student then, and that really taught me something where like I could have had a so much better interview, and then from that point on. Like I would apply to 3 jobs and get like 5 offers, right? And so it really changed after I learned from him where he got the job and I didn't, and I realized it's a show and tell. It's actually like
Absolutely is.
yeah,
I'll tell you, like, this is especially for folks who graduate and then for a year they are not getting the best role that they want, and it makes them feel nervous. I honestly think it's actually a really good opportunity to do things that could shape the career you want to shape, which is not limited by the job, the first job that you landed. I'll tell you, when I was between my high school and my college, I had a gap year, and the kind of activities I got to do, I was like into filmmaking and into like all these interesting things. By the time I had an admission call with the college, the stories I got to tell were so different than what I would have said as a high school student. So I so much the projects you choose, the voluntary
yes,
things
yes.
sometimes define your journey a lot more than the curriculum that you choose in college.
Yeah, and it's great for the interviewer too, because then they get a taste of what did you really like to
Exactly.
work with, right? Rather than can you code on the board and do this leak code hard problem, right? Like it's
Exactly.
just so much better, and so that's great. So what's your advice on how to stand out when applying? And so let's say I want to work at Stellic, and for Waterloo, obviously I have a fixed system. You apply, but either way, you got to submit a resume, right? And so what's your advice on really standing out to rise above the noise, because in the end you're going to get hundreds if not thousands of people applying, and so and you can only interview so many, and so how do you really separate yourself?
Few things. One, be focused, right? And a simple litmus test for that is, if you are applying for 10 very diverse roles and you think you have a story to tell for all of them, then you basically don't have a story to tell for any of them, right?
Right, right, right.
So like pick a lane and say here's, and you can adapt and iterate over time if that's not your area. But focus, I think, is so helpful, because that allows you to create your resume, your stories for that particular type of business or type of area, type of company, stage of company, whatever that is. So one, like, be focused in your storytelling, in your resume, and make sure that you can absolutely see certain companies who would not be interested because of that story, and that means you are curating it for a different ideal kind of companies that you want to go for. Second, as we already discussed, like projects, like what did you do outside of expectation, right? How did you exceed expectation, which hopefully aligns with your passion, with your interest, that could show up in that work as well. That's another thing. Third, relevance is another thing. We look for relevance quite a bit. Like, why us, right? And if people say like, hey, I struggled with this particular academic challenge as a student, here's how I dealt with it, and I would love for other students to not deal with that way. That's great. Then you have like some connection to the problem. So I think relevance is another thing that allows people to stand out. And then lastly, this is like tricky because it talks about privilege, honestly, but connections. We certainly have bias towards referrals, right? Towards warm intros. So it's one thing to just apply cold, and we do our best to review that as much as we can. But if somebody we know says like, hey, take a look at this person and here's why we think could be good for this particular role, that changes the game. So those would be the few things that I would do if
That's
I
great.
was
That's
in that
great.
role.
And it's actually not that hard to build connections, because I think if you go to like a school, Waterloo, you can go reach to old alums. It's not that far off. Hey, I'm an alum. Reach out to me, right? So
Right,
anyway, so,
right.
but
Totally.
this is, but I think that's a really good, because in the real world, hey, how do you meet people, right? It's gonna be like someone vouched for you, someone made an intro, and so that's super cool. So I'm very excited with this question. This is the question I'm excited to, most excited to ask you. So I want you to close me on this. So let's pretend that you're going to make an offer to me. And I'm just like, hey, Sabih, man, this is great. I love Stellic so far, but I have all these great offers. I got offers from Meta, from NVIDIA. Why should I take the offer from you versus them? So what's your answer to that?
That's a good question. The way I say that is, we just crossed 1 million students on the platform. We are on track to get to 10 million in the next 4 years. Do you want to make a difference to those students' decisions? Right? That's it. And you get to solve not the 5 pixel problem. You get to influence the algorithm that helps those decisions be better.
Yep. Yep. I
That's
love
really
that.
my pitch.
I'm gonna borrow your line there. To me, that's like saying, hey, do you want to join Zuck now, or do you want to join Zuck when he's still in his college dorm, right? And so,
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
right, like
Yes.
which camp are you in, right now? Yeah, I think that really separates it, and that's great. I love your answer there. So how can people get a hold of you? What do you recommend? Is LinkedIn, like let's say I don't go to Waterloo, I go to another college and school. I want to, hey, this sounds like a great opportunity, and so I want to apply. I want to get to know you. What do you recommend?
We are like, people don't realize this, but most startups in hypergrowth stage are absolutely bottlenecked by great talent, right? Because you want to have a very high bar and who comes in. So we are very open to always talking to somebody, even if the person doesn't know exactly what they will do. We still take a call and try to understand like why they're interested in our mission or in our space. So happy to talk directly. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. My name's, I guess it will be there in the podcast.
I'll post the link. Yeah.
Yes. And then beyond that, if you go to stellic.com/careers, there'll also be a job posting there. You can apply through that, or reach out to any Stellic member directly on LinkedIn, and they will be happy to chat with you and tell us more about our story and what are the areas where you can help us.
Great, great. Overall, I want to say thank you for your time here. This has been amazing. I wish that you were around when I was a student. And I'm not just saying that. I just think like your energy, enthusiasm, and everything just sounds amazing. I also am very dear to the student experience. I think you're building a product that the world really needs, and especially for college students who are trying to figure out their future, it's so impactful what you guys are doing. So this is great. This is great. Thanks for this. When do you think the first posting is going to come up? Is it coming up soon?
Yeah, very soon. I would say like summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again for Sabih. Really appreciate you coming out. This has been great. And I think this is going to be useful for so many people.
Thank you, Jesse.